Hi, ladies and gentlemen. My name is William Nemec. I'm asking that the residents of the state of Alaska hire me for the U.S. Senate for one term. I own a small business, a trucking company, and I'm a farmer out at Colby Ag Project. And I've done 2 terms in the Denali Barrel Assembly. I've had quite a bit of experience with this. I ran in 1996 for the House, and I'm running because of my love for my country and the dire position that our country has become. Our Constitution is being destroyed, and our way of life is being ruined. And I'd like to go over some things and explain my reasoning. The Constitution is a solid law. It's a basic foundation of a republic, our republic. And at this time, the politicians in Washington, Republican and Democrat, are thinking it's a cultural icon, and they do not regard it as law, and they violate it a lot. And this is getting us into a lot of trouble. And I ran for Congress in 1996 and explained the dangers of FEMA and how it was unconstitutional. There wasn't a real uprising for people to get involved and to see what was happening, because they weren't hurting yet. And I was a little bit advanced in my hoping to see a better response from the public. Now, we're facing the same thing in our history that we faced before, except at this time we're facing it in a much more powerful stance in which we're losing our rights extremely fast. Now, I teach a program called American Workbook, and I've been doing this for a while. After I ran for Congress in 1996, I realized that our problem is that we are not educated, that we do not see what is happening within our government and why we are becoming into the condition that we are today. And so I started working on this project, and I teach a class. I go to businesses, I go to homes, I go to public places. I've even taught them in restaurants. And what I do is I show people Marx and his life and Engels and how they've affected the whole world. And I start out at the beginning with Marx, and I show that he was rebellious and that he was had a Jewish background, but he was extremely rebellious against religious absolutes. He was what I would call a man that hated God. And then he found a way to, with modern science and philosophy, to make a structure of government that can work mathematically correct without the presence of absolutes. And then when he pushed this off onto poor peasants and people that were hurting, it was very easy for him to get followers, because people were desperate and they would reach at any means they could to better themselves, because they were essentially starving. And this philosophy got growing and bigger and more popular with the higher education systems. Engels was an industrialist. His family had a lot of money. And when Marx implemented his ideas, he got into trouble, and he was kicked out of Germany and out of France and out of Belgium. He ended up in England. And then at this time, he realized that he would he was living on the lam, and he realized that he'd have to stop this or he would have nowhere to live. So what he did was he became a newspaper reporter for the New York News. And when he became a reporter for the New York News, he started building a Marxist cell in the United States from Europe with his teachings and his philosophy. And he worked with the higher education circles of influence. And he built himself his system larger and larger. He got people to listen to him. Now, he was a major threat in Europe, and but people caught on to him, and then he was pretty much shut down. I mean, he would be taught as a subject of interest, but he was regarded as a Marxist. Well, he wasn't called Marxist at the time, but he was regarded as a socialist that was just causing an upheaval for his advantage. And so they didn't have much regard for him after controlling him and kicking him out of countries he kind of lost. But in New York, he gained a very good reputation of this movement and rebellion. And this developed over the years, and then a few years later, Marx in the 1880s was a reporter in New York News. In the late 1880s, he passed away. But he had had such an impact on some followers that they continued studying his philosophy of government and human rights versus common sense rights with any sort of a foundation. Marx had showed total rebellion in society to take from the rich and give to the poor, and for people to be all 100% equal in a socialistic machine, which became, in his terminology, communism. And they built a communist manifesto. And this, of course, as we know it today, has affected the whole world. Now, what happened when Marx had left the other countries and went to England, he became very, very poor. I mean, he had to have funding. And so Engels had sent him money and give him support. And then he built his machine. He actually developed his whole life to this, and he just like he couldn't do anything else. And after he had died, of course, when people die, all of a sudden, when they're gone, then everything they've done becomes immortal and great. And a certain class of society just thought that this was a absolute ingenious new way to be fair. And they used this because they could see advantages of building power circles for their own self. Now, as we look at this today, and we look what happened in history, he came through and he affected Europe. Now, as the Soviet Union were changing and growing and trying to get away from the old system of controls, a lot of money and power and support came back to Russia from New York. And in this system, a man named John Reed was a publicist. He was a propaganda builder. He had a genius talent of swaying and writing news. He went to the Soviet Union and helped engineer the whole machine, which the Soviets call their new communist government. And he's now buried in Red Square, an honorary place for him by the Soviet government. And he was one of the main pillars in the Russian Revolution to place communism in power. Now, as this has grown within the United States, the Democratic Party has changed and changed its ideals over the years and has turned into a position of extreme danger, and it's destroying the Constitution of the United States. Now, what we have here is, for instance, in my family, my grandfather was a superintendent in the CCC, which was a private workforce that Roosevelt had made to help the economy and help jobs. And my aunt kept the payroll. And the Democratic Party in my family had been strong for many, many years. And it's like anything else. If you see your ancestors and you're proud and you have pride in your family, you support this. And I'd like to reach out to you that see this movie to look really close at what the Democratic Party has become. Now, there's no way that I would ever support the Democratic Party as it is now. This is extremely dangerous, and they have some views of they want to build communist oligarchy, really a Marxist system in which certain peoples maintain power. Now the Republicans are in this right up to their neck. We don't really have a two-party system anymore. And now that you see the Tea Party movement, this is the reason that I'm becoming active again, is looking at what happened with the Tea Party movement. This Tea Party movement is an absolute miracle. It's an amazing thing to see the American people reach out and love their country and take a stand and bring up the values and try to sustain the republic and to put things together and try to put us in a condition in which we can be proud and we can save our nation. And as we look around and see these things happening, you have to look at the demographics of society and how this has come about. Now, anywhere that Marxism or socialism or communism, however you want to determine it, I mean, we're all talking Marxism here. And what happened is that the first thing in Europe and the first place in any country in the world that Marxism has taken over in that philosophy of thinking, the family has been damaged and broken down. And all through Europe, everywhere we went, the first ill of society that you see that's a major impact is the family. Marriage is not regarded as important, a freer lifestyle. There's not the love between families and strength and closeness. It leaves because the absolutes of importance are gone with the Marxist theology. Now, in the United States right now, there is a 50% divorce rate and a 40% childbirth rate outside of marriage. Now, if you look at the Tea Party movement in the United States, this is a blessed thing. This is what's happening. The women that have children, no husband, and are barely getting by, a broken society, they are the backbone of this Tea Party movement. We have special people in America, strong people. Even though we're hurting and our society is breaking down, women are good and they're looking for the answers, and they're looking for a way to put their life together, and they see things around them that are out of balance and wrong. They might not understand it, but they realize that we've gotten away from the Constitution, and we've gotten away from absolutes, and we've gotten away from rules of family, rules of self-discipline that we maintain, that we have to be happy. And so we look at this problem in society, and we can see that the Obama administration, or we can call this a Marxist regime, because that's exactly what he's done. He's taken the Department of Commerce by executive order, and he's put it into his cabinet, and he's changed laws, and he's tried to adjust the wealth in America, and his health care program he passed is not legally enforceable. Now, to make a law within the United States, especially in a small local borough government or a county government or a state government, you look, the first parameter they have is the law that they pass has to be legally enforceable. Now, the health care plan by the Constitution of the United States and by the standards we live, the way it is written, is absolutely not enforceable without violating the Constitution in many ways. You can't force the poor to pay. You can't have ideals of euthanasia and ideals of qualified people that can have life and not have life by law, and have the government involved in your personal records, your personal finances, for your personal health care, your well-being. The Constitution of the United States absolutely forbids, in more than one way, Obama's health care program. The Republican Party are caught up in this. There's a bunch of opportunists that are there, and they're sitting in the back seat going along for the ride, and they're not defeating the problem. And they're trying to get on the back of the Tea Party and ask for Tea Party endorsements. And